Hello, hello. Can see people are slowly coming in the room.
Good
Oh,
afternoon.
good afternoon. It's nice to hear a voice. If anybody wants to unmute and say hello, you're welcome. If you haven't been here before, I can see some maybe new faces. We always take a little time at the beginning for at least 5 minutes to let people arrive. Is it Teresa or Teres? How do you say
It is. It's Therese.
Today's? Okay, very good. Welcome. Where are you?
Thank you. I'm in Ohio.
Oh, welcome. And I see Loretta and Barbara and Garth and Carol and Lanny and Deborah and Chantal. I was wondering about Chantal. Pam, I don't know if we've met before. Pam, the mysterious image, which is fine. You do not need to come on and say hello, but you can if you like. And then I have another friend here who I know I've met before because I've seen their name, iPhone. iPhone, you and I have met. I'm just kidding. It's actually you in the beautiful blue top. And how are you today? You can unmute if you want to say hi, and you don't have to if you don't want to. I know you have to like grab the phone to find the place to hit it. We can't hear you just yet. But if you find that, there you go.
Hi.
Hello.
Um,
How are
hi.
you?
I've never used Zoom on my cell phone before, so I'm not sure what I'm doing, but my name is Amanda and I'm in Portugal.
Portugal. Where
Yes.
where in Portugal are you?
Right now I'm in the Alentejo, but my husband and I live in Madeira Island.
Oh, beautiful. My wife
Yeah.
is from Galicia and a
Oh,
city called
uh-huh.
Vigo, which is very close to Portugal. I think they think of themselves almost a little more Portuguese than they like to think of themselves as Spanish. So, well, what
Wow.
a lovely thing for you to join us from all the way over there in the evening. It must be about what, 8 o'clock?
It is, yes.
Great.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for joining.
Yes,
And
thank you.
yeah, so let's see. Oh, and there's David's iPad Air, but that might be the David we know. I don't know. And well, so does anybody have anything they would like to share or ask before we get into today's topic, which
Just
I'm,
want to make a comment here.
yes,
We're all in the tone of blues today. We're lots of blue
yeah,
color.
I
Huh?
see that. I do see that.
The healing color. That's all I wanted
Yeah,
to say.
and just in that general spectrum, even the darker colors there. Oh,
Yeah.
that's our David. Hello, how are you today? Good, good. Well, does anybody, so any other item? Oh, look at Pam. I don't know what's going on with you. Must have something over your camera, but it's very magical looking. I hope you know that. You look like a spirit, or at least the way spirits appear to some people. Um, Anybody have any special requests or needs before we get going? No? Okay. Shoot. Well, how about this? I don't know why I always like to ask this, but I would love to see in the chat at least if anyone, this is going to sound silly, if anyone has seen a fabulous movie lately that you felt had a deep meaning or spiritual um, thread within it. So it doesn't have to be like a documentary about spirituality or a movie about consciousness, but I wonder if any of you have seen any films that you found of a powerful spiritual message in. And if so, put it in the chat so we can all do something fun over the weekend and watch your recommendation. And if you don't have a recommendation, well, I'll just have to search for an option, which usually takes me about as long as the movie itself. All right. Poor things. Oh yeah. I know that is crazy. Oh, Frozen 2. Yeah, I've heard that actually. Peanut Butter Falcon. Yeah, that is a great movie. I really like that movie. See, this is nice. Okay, so the topic of the day is pain. Now, some of you might not know that because you found us through Humanities Team, and others are on my newsletter list, which is easy to find because it's just my name, jonathanellerby.com, and then sign up for the newsletter. And it comes out every week, usually comes out today, unless I make a mistake or I forget or something like that. And it includes a link to the show and then usually some kind of content. There's not a lot of promotion in it, sometimes never. But there's like a video or some writing or maybe a link to an interview, and sometimes it has all of those things, and sometimes it's a bit sparse. That's the way it is. But the video that I posted was on the topic of pain, and I'm very interested in exploring this with you today. And for the people that haven't been with us before, sometimes I do a lot of talking, and sometimes I do a lot of talking even when I say I'm not going to do a lot of talking. That's common. Um, but we always try to have something a bit experiential, like a meditation or a prayer or both. And sometimes we have, oh, some construction workers just showed up. That's great. And sometimes we have a lot of discussion and sometimes we have less, but there's always some interactive component. Now, my intention today is to have a substantial amount of conversation, although I think I said that last week and I lied because we did quite a deep dive into the stages of the spiritual journey. But I think what I'm going to do today is a little bit different. I'm going to go straight into a presentation. I'm going to try to wrap up this presentation. When I say presentation, I just mean I'm going to use some slides to share some ideas. I'm going to try to have this wrapped up in 15 minutes. And if I don't have this wrapped up in 15 minutes, you are welcome to unmute yourself and say, Jonathan, you said you're going to wrap up in 15 minutes. When I finish that, I'd really like to hear from as many of you as possible today your experience of what I'm sharing. And if you think it's true or not true, do you have a different perspective or something to add or something similar? And then we'll conclude our time together with something prayerful. So having said that, let's do, if nothing else, let's just take a moment. If you have the ability, wherever you are, to safely stop. And I'm going to encourage you to put one hand on your belly. I like to put my left hand on my belly, my right hand on my heart. And I'm going to invite you to close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath in through your nose, any old way. Hold it for a moment. Notice what's going on inside. Tension, tightness, busyness of mind. And exhale, long, slow exhale out through your mouth. And just simply repeat that a few times. Big breath in through the nose. Hold it. Exhale long and slowly. And I'm going to encourage you to continue like this. And as you begin to feel calm and quieter and more aware of what's going on within you and around you, then I'm also going to ask you to notice, just notice the presence of any pain in your awareness or your life right now. And really, I mean more emotional, spiritual, mental, but it could be physical. So as we settle into the quietness and turn our attention inward, just notice if there's anything that you're carrying these days. Could be like a heavy heart, sadness, discomfort, fear. You don't have to name it or talk to anyone about it. Just notice if there's something that's up for you lately. And just kind of be curious how it feels today, how you've been handling it. Are you facing it, avoiding it? If there's nothing that comes to mind, that's great. That's fine. And then with another deep breath in and a refreshing exhale, allow yourself to come back to the group. Knowing that after having a little time just to breathe together, it's a little easier to be together. So I think at the heart of what we talk about each week and what we gather around is this idea of a spiritually centered life. And it's kind of ironic because most of the world seems to be living the opposite. So when you look at the way I've portrayed the circles here, if you can see the screen, there's an outer circle that says physical, then a next circle says mental, next circle says emotional, next circle says spiritual. And for me, these are ordered in a particular way. Culturally, in the West, you might say that this even shows our priority structure. Now, some would say, well, we're a mental culture. That's actually what dominates more than physical. But I don't know. I don't know. I still think we are a remarkably materialistic world today in terms of ambition and self-preservation and greed, and how we think is even informed by the physical, and that includes everything, science and finance and so, all this stuff. But there's no question, close on its heels in the modern Western world is the mind and the dominance and ever presence of thought and intellect as the basic standard of knowing and communicating and evaluating worth, after, of course, um, physical power, which is seen usually either in terms of force or finance. But we intellectualize things, and our schooling reflects that, and our language reflects that. And it's interesting because we've built this entire sort of Western worldview in this very mental, physical way. In fact, it's interesting that really the first innovation in wellness in the last, couple hundred years was the movement into what people called mind body medicine, if you can think of that. And isn't that a funny indication? Isn't that a funny indication of what the priorities are in the culture? That it wasn't heart and soul medicine. It wasn't heart and body medicine. It wasn't soul and body medicine. It wasn't soul and mind medicine. It was mind and body medicine. But interestingly, I think what we've seen in recent decades, and oddly, I'm going to give Oprah Winfrey a lot of credit for this, despite how bizarre that might sound. Um, we have seen a rise or the rise of understanding how significant emotional health is. And the reason why I single out Oprah is because I think Oprah probably became the most influential force of culture that began inviting the world to see that behind people's behaviors and thoughts was an emotional story. And that's really how she became famous. It was that moment of American daytime talk shows where we started to see that the bad teacher and the deadbeat dad and the addict and the criminal and all these characters that were hard to relate to back in the 80s, we suddenly started to humanize and see that they became the way they were because of things that had happened to them. And I would argue that COVID was probably the next big gift to the emotional awareness which is that the rates of stress and anxiety started to skyrocket in such a way that the work world had to begin to acknowledge that mental health is real and is important and is every bit as much as real and important as physical health or any other kind of health. And of course, when I say mental health, I do refer to emotional as well. We ain't quite at spirituality as a priority. Not quite yet. But it feels like we're gonna get there because the stakes are getting higher. And at some point, we're gonna have to face some very, very big questions individually and collectively. And it's gonna boil down to some very simple spiritual answers, which is who are we really and why are we here? And what is our purpose? And how do we derive meaning? How can we go forward together and create a vibrant future for all? And the answer to all these questions, even the material questions of extinction, they're going to be questions ultimately of consciousness and spirit. So despite the fact that I've just sort of argued for how the world seems set up today, and I'm generalizing when I say the world, mostly I mean the Western or first world in developmental terms, I would argue that what we've pursued here at Humanities Team or in my work is a life lived very much the other way around, which is that we begin with the spiritual, we begin with prayer, with connection, with intuition, we begin with meditation, we begin with our connectedness to self and all things, and whatever that is for you, God, life, the universe. And we recognize that that vibratory dimension, that subtle energy dimension, is first experienced energetically, or I would say emotionally. So just a step away from energy, the next level of awareness or interpretation in the human system is emotion. And we know that. We know, although we forget that if you want to change the energy of anything, emotions will be the leverage, not mind or body, even if it's changing the body or the mind. Because any behavior that's hard to change, any thought that's hard to change, is held in place by an emotion. When we have this clarity of connection between soul or spirit and awareness of our emotional condition, then we have a greater maturity and clarity by which we can choose to use the mind to be creative, to be intentional, and then to take action, which is the physical. Now, a soul-centered life sounds pretty good because that means that all things start with inspiration. All things start with connection. All things start with the big picture. But strangely, that remains easier said than done. Again and again and again, we find ourselves reading books, attending classes, going to workshops, thinking through things ourselves. We know how we want to live, and then we see what we do instead. And the simple human reality is that while we are born in this kind of natural state as spiritual beings, highly emotional, developing mentally and physically, I mean, that's just what youth is, something gets in the way. Something redirects us. And that something is usually an experience of pain. Now, the pain could be the pain as a child, could be the pain of a humiliation, the pain of judgment by a parent. It could be the pain that is the fear of being in a home where there's abuse or instability or addiction. There are all kinds of ways we experience pain as young people. Now I'm going to just go to my next slide, although I don't. Oh, yeah. Hang on. Not going to go there yet. So there's all kinds of ways that we experience pain as a young person, but there are two key consequences or problems with the experience of pain as a young person, which is one, we immediately interpret it as a sign that who and what we are or the way we are must be wrong, or we wouldn't feel this incredible loss of spirit and overwhelm of emotion and confusion of mind. So we begin to doubt this very model that we're born with. We begin to doubt putting spirit first. We begin to cover up our emotions or exaggerate our emotions. We begin to change our thinking, all because of the influence of pain. Now, one of the pictures that I want to give you that's really important for today is to think of yourself as having an energy body, that your energy body is the kind of subtle architecture of your life here on Earth. So that means that something like maybe I don't know, like a science fiction movie or a Chinese medicine textbook or a Reiki textbook, you could look at a person or an Alex Gray painting, and instead of seeing the body, you could see all these cords and channels and networks of life, something almost like your nervous system. And when pain is introduced, imagine that infrastructure of who you are suddenly is in shock. And then, because of the power of pain, it adapts and adjusts. And if it goes untended to, unquestioned, unhealed, that becomes the new infrastructure. Each time a developmental pain is introduced, which we can also call trauma or wound, that energetic architecture is changed. Now, there's a problem with that, because whenever that pain is activated, we see a kind of pattern that ripples through the system. We replace, and this now let's jump from the imprinting as young people to the way we are today. When something hits our system or triggers the feeling of pain, then we replace spirituality at our center with the drive for safety. And emotionally, we become attached to that drive. And mentally, we judge anything that threatens it. And physically, we try to engage in behaviors of control. So if you come stay at my house, I'm going to use a really generic example, and I got an eye on the clock, 6 minutes. If you come stay at my house and you wake up early to do the dishes, but then you put them all away in the wrong place. And maybe when I was a kid, I don't know, I'm making this up. This is definitely not my story. But maybe when I was a kid, I was expected to put away all the dishes, maybe even at a bit of a young age, and maybe with a lot of judgment, maybe even punishment for doing it wrong. And now, in this infrastructure of my energy body, I have this pain that says, if you don't look after the kitchen right, then something's wrong with you. And now you've come in to my home and tried to tell me where to put things and made a mess of my kitchen and my organization. And all of a sudden, something that's imprinted with an old experience of pain that's translated into a current behavior. This is the way it's got to be. I'm attached to it. I'll judge you if you don't do it because I don't feel safe when it's not happening. And all of a sudden, my wonderful friend that's come to stay with me feels like my enemy. I can't wait till they leave. You know, who would put a spoon here? Who would put a bowl here? Right? I'm just trying to make this a little bit silly, but yet these are the kinds of things that get in the way of our lives and our relationships. When you notice your drive for control, judgment, or attachment, very easy things to observe. Am I being controlling? Am I being judging? Am I holding on too tight? Then you know that safety has moved to the center of your worldview, spirituality is out. But I want to invite you today, if you haven't already seen this or thought of this, to look at pain differently. Pain, emotional, mental, spiritual pain. As an adult, pain is an indicator. It's just like a light on the dashboard of a vehicle. It's not implicitly good or bad. It's an indicator that there is a threat to the system as it is. And I invite you to consider that when pain arises, you are being invited to engage power, awareness, insight, and new choices. Power, awareness, insight, and new choices. It obviously spells pain. Power means pain feels like power, like it's going to ruin my life. So we try to escape it. We try to avoid it. We try not to be uncomfortable. It's too powerful. It's going to take over me, right? If I let myself have this feeling, I'll never stop feeling it. Awareness. It's calling us to look at something, to pay attention to something. If we have reactivity, then there is something not healed. There is something egoic or something traumatic in that place. It's calling our attention. And insight, if we sit with that attention, if we embrace or at least open our hearts and minds to the power, then we may learn something. There's insight there. Oh, this reminds me of that. Or this is about needing to be right. Or this is showing me something about myself. Or any number of those kinds of insights. And ultimately, if there's pain, then there is an obvious invitation to make a change. Now, in some immediate short-term settings, of course, not all pain is good in the sense of a great master teacher or something you want to say thankful for. Sometimes you just need to make a choice pretty quick and get out of there, right? If you're in a dangerous setting. But think of this more in terms of life patterns and relationships and the ways we get stuck. Where there is pain, there is the opportunity to engage power, awareness, insight, and new choices. And here's a pretty interesting thing to think about. I don't know what my next slide is. Okay. If what's interesting to think about, because a lot of us, especially in the spiritual world, have wanted to believe that there's got to be a way to heal without suffering. It sounds punitive. It almost sounds like old world punitive, forgive the reference, but Christianity saying, you're no good, you should suffer. That's not the kind of suffering we're talking about. We're not talking about punishment. We're just saying that change is hard, and change comes with discomfort, and change comes with pain. Now, here's the thing I was going to say that's so provocative, to me anyway. If pain put your nervous system and your energy body in the condition that it's in, then wouldn't it make sense that pain might be a part of the formula to change it? Now, pain can be all kinds of discomfort. The discomfort of therapy, any kind of therapy, physical therapy, mental therapy, emotional therapy. Could be the pain of just taking ownership of things. Could be the pain of admitting the truth. Could be the pain of seeing yourself more clearly. I'm not talking about a kind of punishing pain. I'm just talking about the discomfort of disintegrating what has become the norm and embracing the ideal state or the next state or the healing state. Now, I am going to wrap up because I promised I'd wrap up about now. This is easier said than done. So I added this slide. What helps us get closer to pain? Presence, acceptance, inquiry, and nurturing. I would argue this is really the first step for most of us, which is just be present with your pain. Just notice, wow, I am so afraid right now. Or wow, I am so overwhelmed. I'm so angry, whatever the emotion is. Or I'm so obsessed with this, or I'm so scattered, whatever the pain is, be present with it and move to accept it. Accept it means not that you will tolerate this as an ongoing state of life. It means you forgive it. You acknowledge it. You do more than just be present, but you say, I understand. You're here for a reason. I understand this is not negotiable. I understand that I'm not going to wish this away. And then we go to inquiry, which is just start to be curious. Like, wow, does this happen every time someone says that? Or are they right? Do I always do this? Or is that an exaggeration, right? Just be curious. And finally, the last thing, and then I'm going to wrap up. Nurture yourself. When you're trying to get close to pain, sounds ironic, but it's important to build your own safety. So as you go through the healing, the therapy, the change, the difficult decision, it's self-care, right? So whether it's a shorter work day or a walk in nature or going to the spa or whatever you can do, a bath. Pain is very much about facing the truth of your situation. But truth cannot bring transformation without safety, and safety comes from nurturing. So there's a lot to cover in this model, but I'm going to stop. And I'm pretty thrilled because I said 15 minutes and I secretly thought, okay, I'll give myself 20. Oh, sorry, bald eagle just flew by my window here. I would really love to hear from any of you or many of you. What does this bring up for you? Do you relate to this? Have you had an experience of this? Does this feel disturbing? Like something you do not want to consider? Uh, do you have an example of how this might be true for you? Or maybe you have another perspective to add, but I'm definitely looking for your reactions. And I am going to pick on some people today. So the easiest thing is if you raise your hand with the reaction emoji. Um, if you don't know how to do that, you could physically raise your hand. And worst case scenario, we'll forgive you if you just unmute and come in, but that's a little harder. Okay, so Carol first, then Lanny, and then I'm going to pick on someone. Carol, go ahead. Welcome.
Okay, I had a terrible day yesterday. I nearly had a car crash, could have killed a cyclist. So yes, I was a little bit, hyper alert, whatever. However, in the evening, I went dancing and I hadn't been for about 6 weeks because of traveling, because of being ill, because of having other functions, whatever. And I'd gone back. So obviously I was behind where everybody was because it's formation dancing. So they'd done it a few times. They had more idea of it. However, I kept up. I did it all correctly, didn't make any mistakes. So it was really a success. Okay. And I'm driving home and I'm thinking, I don't feel like I'm good enough to go to this. So the logic part of me thought, this is absolute crap. But if I'm honest with the emotion was there. So I thought, well, okay, I'm not good enough. Emotions come up for a reason. So there's something underneath this. So we need to go there. So I thought, oh, now's not the time. Anyway, I was thinking about it as I went to sleep. So 2 hours after I'd gone to sleep, I woke up with a nightmare.
Hmm.
Anyway, I realized which meridian was out and I was very unbalanced. And in the protocol that I'm trained in, it would have taken me 10 minutes to have corrected it. I had to hold it for 2 hours to get it sorted.
Oh,
And the minute I'd got it sorted, I went straight back to sleep, perfectly peaceful. So today I've spent some time working on it, and this is not good enough. And I wanted to know what it related to. How far did it go back? And it goes back to when I was 6 months old.
Hmm.
Okay. So my parents had parted. They made up one day, resulting in me. And so my father went back. And when I was 6 months old, he left again.
Hmm.
My mother took him back on the basis that I was enough to keep him. So the pressure was put on me to be enough,
Oh.
then to stay together.
Hmm.
And I've
Wow.
always been told it was my fault because I came along. And that's what was coming up. And that is what's resulting. So it was accepting the emotion, yeah, on your scale, that made me go to the insights. I've got the insights and I'm now moving to work through it. And underneath that, I think it's about learning that you don't control everything. And, so there's a little bit more to go. So I know I'm not 100%, but I just thought it fitted in quite well.
That was an incredible illustration and brave of you. And I'll say that I believe that even sharing it is going to help, right? Because it keeps moving that which is unconscious into consciousness. And it's a part of changing that energy body. So thank you. That was very incredibly self-aware and so wonderful to have someone illustrate that. I will add nothing except thank you. Yeah, it's great. And it will continue to unfold. So I just said I'd say nothing, and now I'm saying
No,
it will
that's really
continue.
helpful.
It will continue to unfold for you. And this is where you're now in the end of the pain, which is you recognize the power of it, right? You brought awareness to it. You found the insight, and now you're going to be making the new choices based on the new insight, which will over time continue to affirm the new pattern. And we know that's even true neurologically, not just in our nervous system and our subtle energy body, but neurologically. It's kind of old news. You're going to lay down that new pathway, that new thought. Sometimes enough is enough. Sometimes good enough is good enough. And I don't have to be responsible for that level of perfection. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It
Uh
seems like it's a
oh
little
yeah.
bit like a spiral. So, of course, you've come round to this,
Oh
but now
yes.
you've gone up a level. So when it comes round again, you'll be going, oh, it's this old chestnut. Oh, that's nothing to worry about. That's not true. And then the next time you almost bypass it.
Yeah,
So,
that is actually, thank you for adding that. It almost like a spiral that gets smaller, right? That's a very, very important thing to share with people, especially anyone who's in pain right now and wonders, when am I going to get through it? Well, the first pass, especially when we're acquiring these skills or facing a major issue, that cycle is slow. It feels like it's going to take forever to end, but then we do come through it. And then the next time it's a little slower, and then a little slower. And then one day there will be a time where you will still feel the triggers, but you'll catch them, you'll know what they are, and you'll keep going. No, it's great. Thank you. Now who did I say? I already said Lanny. I said Lanny was next. So Lanny, and then we have Chantel and Joan. We got lots of people ready to go. Lanny.
Okay. I don't like showing my picture because I've been in bed all day, so with pain.
Oh,
So that's why I'm hiding. Um, but it's of course perfect timing. Um, I I have this recurrent pain in my digestive area and dizziness. And it's been a mystery, blah, 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 blah. And 2 nights ago, a lot of doctors think I don't sleep well enough. I don't think that's it. So 2 nights ago, I did a sleep study at home, which was I was like most restless, at least in my perspective. I was most restless. I was uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep. The sleep doctor called me this morning and said, It was on for 9 hours and 48 minutes, and 8 hours were sleep. So I don't have sleep apnea. And I was laughing because it's like, oh, this is great, but we're back to square one. I've called wherever. I also, one of my things tells me that, and when I ever send out information about my health on my symptoms sheet, I always say, what am I not digesting? There's something that I'm not digesting. I think emotionally is what I look at it as. I haven't gotten to the wonderful point of the person before us. And actually I had my therapist today at 3 o'clock after you guys. And I also got from work, a lot of us have been I have a part-time job, 2 part-time, 1 part-time is on a weekend, and they have this air freshener above where we work, which a lot of us think it's toxic. Then they also recently had norovirus, which they didn't tell us about until too late. But I used the opportunity to have her give us information about that air freshener. So I just got that today, and I got to show it to somebody who knows what it is. I mean, a lot of it sounds horrible. And a lot of the residents are getting sick, which this might be, what's getting people sicker than normal. But I'm actually laughing at the whole situation because it feels like, my instinct is there's something, and I did get into my gastro for next month. It's hard to get into doctors. And wow, this is interesting. My mom passed away from colon cancer, which is why I have a gastro and I go regularly. This is to me, it's in my intestines, whatever the pain is. So, and we've looked at it. Every test I do for everything is fine, no problem. I did see an alternative for my adrenals because that's my energy's totally zapped. And I sleep a lot, and I do nurture myself by going to bed and watching wonderful stuff on TV. And I sleep well, and then I make myself wrong for being in bed nurturing myself. I can't, I have no choice really, but that's how my mind works. And I'm loving being in bed nurturing myself. And my kitty cat will sleep on top of me, which helps the nurturing. But the mystery is still, I think everything is emotional. That's how I think. I think everything is emotional that we or I put into my body, but I haven't gotten to the clue of, what's the connection. So that's where I am. And I love the insight before. I'm not there yet. I can't hear you.
Unfortunately, each time any of you share, it's always so rich and deep. We could just talk to Lanny for the next hour. Couple things come to mind though. The first is interesting. Carol sent you a little note that you immediately addressed a second later. I don't know if you noticed that, Carol.
No,
Because
no.
Carol asked you a question about self-compassion. And then the next thing you said was, and then I feel guilty about being in bed or whatever it was. So the interesting thing, so I'm not going to speak directly, just partly because of time, respectfully, to what could the pain of the GI issue be about. I'm going to actually do something a little different and say that very often, and maybe this is relevant for you, Lanny, maybe it's not, but what I experience in my work is very often when we have physical pain, not only do we have to potentially accept the fact that there's an emotional root or an emotional dimension, but I will say very often, there is emotional pain simply around the fact that there's a problem at all and that we haven't figured it out. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I know a lot of people, I've worked with a lot of people who, it's enough to have pain, physical pain. It's enough to have physical conditions that may and probably have deeper roots. But when we don't figure them out quickly, especially if we're on a spiritual path. That in itself can be painful. And it turns into the pain of, why me? I've done all this good work. And I'm not saying about you, Lanny, I'm using this to speak generally. But it can turn into that other level of pain, which is, I've tried everything. And why not? Why don't I get the healing? I've done all the right things and I've asked all the right questions. And I wanted this to be happening in my life, and it's not. And those things in themselves, just the relationship with the condition, can be a source of pain. And interestingly, for most of us, when we find healing in our relationship with that source of pain, the source of pain itself begins to be remedied. Now, not always 100%, because there can be large physical dimensions to it, but very often moving to a place of loving. So hard to even imagine, but loving our illness, loving our injury, loving our limit, can invite that power, awareness, and insight into it. And I hope that comes for you. And I do feel like you are exactly on the right path, and you are the kind of person that has that insight to care for yourself and look at how you're holding it and do the deeper work. And I pray that not only is there more peace, but also the physical healing as well. So we're, with your permission, we're all gonna send
Thank
you
you.
good.
Just so you know, I am super compassionate. I just looked at the note. I'm compassionate. I mean, I sometimes wear a bracelet, self-compassion and compassion. There used to be a group here, Sacred Space, all about compassion. But anyway, that is my perspective. And when something like yucky happens at the job where people are getting sick, I'm trying to look at a larger perspective.
Right.
Maybe this stuff is leading to some other healing for not only me, but other people. Or why do people act so patriarchally, at work? So that is, and I do work on compassion for being in bed and accepting it, and sometimes liking it. I guess it's the doingness, that I'm not out there doing and being a real person. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I wish we could spend more time with you, but I will say you are a real person, and I think everyone here loves you, and we're
Thank you
grateful
all.
for you. Yeah.
Appreciate you all. Thank you.
I think Chantal had her hand up next, and then Joan. I think that was the order.
Well, I have three things to say.
Okay.
Since March, I've been having hip pain, and then I got the result that I have bone-to-bone hip pain, and I said, why is it? Because I already have rheumatoid arthritis, I have osteoporosis, and now I have arthritis. I said, will it ever stop? So I was really not happy about that. So I said, what am I going to do? So I think I am on the nurturing path, because for me, all my life, I was very hard on myself. So now I'm taking about 1 to 2 Tylenol a day. Usually I take 1 Tylenol every 6 months. Now I'm drugged by Tylenol to help me with pain and to help me to be able to think right, because with the pain, I don't think right, I get depressed. So I said, happy medium, I will take Tylenol. That was one way of nurturing myself and not be so hard, being in the spiritual path. I should be strong. So that's why I was not taking Tylenol. I said, okay, be nice to yourself, Chantal. So I got 3 things that I want to say. Like, I use all kind of ways to nurture myself. I wake up in the middle of the night and I read a little excerpt from Joe Dispenza. And I put it in my own words. It says that if you can let go of the past and the future and be in the present moment, you will be in that unified field or the source. And when you are in that unified field, then you can heal and change the way you think, set a new mind. So I said, oh, that's good. So I will keep meditating, because when I go in my meditation, I get to a place where I'm still, and that's the time I can heal, from what I have, So I said, okay, this is food for good thoughts. And then secondly, I went to a place. I've left a link on the chat. It's called EE system, energy enhancement system, and it was discovered by, created by Sandra Rose Michael. And basically, you enter the room, and there is a bunch of screen with computerized energy quantum energy field that just throw that energy in the room. So I sat there, and obviously there is other people, and I was analyzing everything, and my intention was to release tension, because that's my main thing. I have too much tension, pain, and all that. And then all of a sudden I felt like a balloon, when a balloon deflates completely, deflated, I just shrink into nothingness. And then at that point, there was no more pain. And it stayed like that. And when I came out of the room, since then, something is going on with the way I feel that pain in my hip now. It has a different, I don't know, different take on it. So I was very happy. And they did tell me that if I keep coming, it's cumulative. It will do its healing. I said, okay. And it's all about the quantum field again and the energy field. So I kind of like that. And but obviously I was very exhausted after that, because I've been in pain and having illness for so many years that it takes a while. So, but the third thing is, I was listening to something today, and it's all about pain again. And it was from a monk that was saying that difficulties develop still in the muscles of our souls. Without them, we will develop into a kind of spiritual cream puff. I don't know if you understand. Without we wouldn't do anything if we didn't have pain or something like that to stir up our souls. So basically, and then lastly, when I experienced that deflating sense of no more tension, it has to do with the nervous system. They say that the nervous system can become so noisy that it is drowning the divine sound of creation when the nervous system is out of whack, that you cannot be in tune with that source itself. And it says that without sadhana, which is about spiritual practice, the nervous system is a very noisy and confusing place. All the pain and suffering come from the noise or the static that is coming from the nervous system when it's out of tune. And it says to be practical is to spiritualize yourself. That means meditate and become the spirit itself. And then that way, again, to be in that unified field, to be in the place where you're in the present moment, you are in spirit, and then healing can take place. And I feel good about that, because I said, okay, I've been meditating long enough. I know that. So the good lesson that I've learned from the pain is meditate deeper, Chantal. Just stay in tune with that. Don't give up, because I gave up because I had the pain. So I said, don't give up. You can still be embodied, but keep meditating. Don't forget the order nature. You are spirit. And maybe that's why I have that, maybe to challenge myself to remember who I am, So that's what I wanted to say. Oh, cannot hear you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for walking us through your process and helping us see it and feel it. And really the thread, and I'm not going to say too much because we're just about out of time. I want to make sure Joan gets to speak, and we were going to do a little prayer, and we're going to squeeze it all in. But I love that thread that you shared from the Joe Dispenza reference to the last, re using pain as an opportunity to return to the place within you that really has no pain. I mean, that's the way I think of it. Connect with the consciousness that is so vast that it holds all pain, but so vast that all pain is, I mean, it's easier said than done, but it's so vast that all pain is small inside it. And there was this, I can't remember if it was uh, Teresa of Avila who said, or one of the um, female mystics, um, it's like the vastness of God is such that all suffering becomes but the tip of a pin, and so when you align yourself or dissolve into that presence, it provides a different way of seeing and feeling. So thank you. Joan, did you want to, you took your hand down, but I wonder if I don't want to ask you to be brief, but I wonder if you want to,
I don't want to, because I know you have a prayer you wanted to get to, and
are you
it's
sure? Your little 2 cents? A blip?
my little two
Are you
cents.
are you
You
capable
know,
of a little blip?
um, it's the same point of pain for me. Is my words, I swear from birth, are truth and knowing. And I go into what's her name? And I love her, the woman who's like question this and could turn it around. The work, whatever her name is, the work.
Oh, Byron Katie.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, well, what if it isn't true? And what if it, and but it's so hitting me where examples, this morning I was called on, someone called and said, you sent a text. I want to gently remind you of the hours of the pool. And I was like, I've been in the pool. You sent a text to someone and asked them to open it up at 7 a.m. Well, I go to bed between 2 and 4. And that, I'm like, no, I did not. That isn't true. And when there's been 5 things that are much larger on that scale, and they disturb me when people lie, and I go overboard, and I know I react super strongly, but it's so, and it's especially when it's directed towards me, or there isn't any mold. I have pictures of all the mold. We don't sell this product, it's illegal, and here's a photo of it in a store. So they're so obvious. And then I get a call from someone, and I do my quote unquote reading, because I do see those threads and those people and that energy. And even people who commented today, I'm like, oh, there's something you're not swallowing. Like I see things and I know things. I had a brain injury, and the gift is what I was shown is, when you see through your heart, that which is invisible is actually in the visible, is inside the visible, becomes insight, whether it's insight or, so the contrast is what brings such pain to me. And I flunk self-nurturing 3000%. So I'm stuck in self-nurture. I'm like, I do bad things, and I eat bad food, and I'm miss perfect during the day and then at night. And so it's the contrast of knowing what's true and being fed lies that causes me to not nurture. And it's painful. Okay.
Thank you. So, you hit on something very important, and I know we're now at the end of our time. I'll still squeeze in a little something here. But I have to confess something about my little pain model, which was power, awareness, insight, and nurturing. I actually debated, and maybe I didn't listen long enough. I'm willing to accept that. that maybe the A needed to be alignment. And I think you've brought another element to the conversation today that I just want to emphasize. You know, sometimes we hear each other tell our stories, and we can't always immediately hear how the story is for us. But there's that thread in what you shared around lies and truth and people representing other people. Alignment is often what pain is about. There's something about this that is not for me. And typically the original pain that shapes that nervous system or that energy body is caused by an event that feels out of alignment. So I love that you brought that to us. Now, I would love to hear from everybody, but we need to wrap up. And behind me, I don't know if you can see there was a little disruption here. There is an enormous truck that just showed up onto our property to drop off a big bin because the people that own the place that we rent are having the roof replaced tomorrow. And this guy in his big truck almost drove right into my tiny little office. And I was afraid you were going to lose me. Anyway, I mean, not physically, but my cable and windows. Anyway, so if there's a noise in the background, forgive the noise. And we're going to say our closing prayer. I hope no one's pounding on the door while my eyes are shut and we're having a moment. But as we prepare to take this moment, I do want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank everyone for what they shared, the way you illustrated your own journeys in different ways. I think it was really interesting to hear how these pieces of power and alignment and insight and nurturing, you know, the acceptance, the presence, all these things, how they all come together and how they really do unite our experience. You know, it's a sad reality in the human world, but while pain is something we'd like to avoid, not only is it a part of healing, it's also part of what connects us. Because it is in hearing our woundedness, sharing our woundedness, opening our hearts to each other's woundedness, that the world really remembers emotionally that we are one. With that, let's have a brief moment. If you can stay, and if you have to go, that's fine too. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. We'll take a breath. And in simplicity, let us feel the silence within us and around us. Let us know that we are as close in this space and place as if we were sitting side by side. That in this stillness and silence, we remember the presence of all that is our source, our substance, our future. All things exist with us in this moment. And so we pray each in our own way, but together as one, to the one that is all. Gratitude for this day, for this time together, and for the opportunity to learn and love and let go. May we together and each in our own way unfold a new understanding of this human experience and this thing we call pain. May we have courage and patience to open our hearts and minds to the love and wisdom that is ever present and longing for our embrace. May we offer it to each other. May we accept it for ourselves. And may we be humbled by the pain of this life, so that we may live, as it is said, not broken, but broken open, surrendered to a higher wisdom, a higher love, a higher light, and carry that imperfectly every day for ourselves, for each other, and our world. And so for this and all the prayers and hopes and thoughts that remain in our hearts, we lift it all together and say, Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for everyone new that came and stayed. And maybe we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Bye-bye to everyone I didn't get to name or say. Marianne and Barbara and Eve and the whole gang. Deborah, Bonnie. Bye.